Hi, my name is Anthony Garcia, and this is my reality. Hi, my name is Anthony Garcia, and this is my reality TV. Hi, my name is Anthony Garcia, and this is my reality TV. What I'm about to share with you is a very brief chapter of my life. You see, my parents, after being married for over 40 years, divorced over an affair my father was having with a much younger woman in the Philippines. She was 18 to be exact. For over a year, I refused to have anything to do with my father. In my mind, he was as good as dead. But eventually, my anger gave way to curiosity. After all, he was still my dad, and it's true what they say. Life is short, and that's when I made the decision to go find him, figuratively as well as literally. The search that I'm about to share with you took me halfway around the world, to a place that I would have never imagined existed. Taking advantage of today's technology, I made a documentary about my experience and decided to add fuel to the fire for our culture's voyeuristic appetite to peep into the lives of others. The Greek philosopher Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." If he were alive, I wonder, would he appreciate my attempt to make sense of this story that I'm about to share with you? If you'll bear with me, I'll try to bring you up to speed. This story actually starts 40-something years ago, when my father, of Filipino descent, traveled by ship across the Pacific Ocean for 22 days, ending up here in San Francisco, the city by the bay. Within no time, he met my mother, a third-generation Japanese American. The two married and started a family. That's me. We started out in one of San Francisco's poorest neighborhoods, but eventually made our way to the suburbs. And like all families, we had our fair share of ups and downs. Many years later, retired, my father started traveling back and forth to the Philippines to visit relatives, for business, and for a relationship that would cost him his family. This is how my brother and sisters took it.
God, how could you do that to the family?
I just want to make sure that Mom's taken care of.
What am I going to tell my children?
Where's his priority?
He's such a horrible grandfather.
What are we going to do?
I can't believe that he would do something like this to us.
And this is the point in the story where I pretended he was dead.
We're now approaching San Francisco Airport. We will be arriving.
After not talking to my father for a year, my conscience must have gotten the best of me, because that's when I decided to go find him. Born and raised in the United States, I had no idea what it would be like to travel to a developing country, especially outside of the tourist zone. Naturally, the airline magazines and other promotional materials highlighted the posh tourist resorts. You know, where the rich and famous go for a tropical getaway. Since I'm neither rich or famous, I'm gonna be up front. My trip is gonna look a little different. After flying for 18 hours and escorted by an aunt and uncle, I had to travel several more hours by car. to La Union, a province area north of Manila. And as soon as I stepped off the plane, it was obvious I wasn't in Kansas anymore. As I traveled outside of Manila and into the provinces, the road conditions became a little more rugged. Before making my way to my father's town, I had to travel through countless cities, as well as dodge a bus or two. It was dusk by the time I reached the town where my father and his new lover lived. I wish I could tell you our reunion was the kind you see in a Hollywood movie, but it wasn't. The truth is, he was drunk. Very drunk. But nevertheless, he was happy to see me. His new lover was out of town for the evening, so I had to wait one more day to meet her. My first night was spent at my father's farm, which was on the outskirts of the city in a more rural area. My chaperones were my first cousin and his family, and to be honest, before that day, I didn't even know they existed, let alone listen to rapper Eminem.
There's a lot in my mind that comes about when I'm alone.
Earlier that night, my father had pulled me aside and in a drunken stupor poured out his emotions, telling me his regrets, his disappointments, and his wish to have his old life back.
It was my fault, all of it.
Later, after he left, I went to sleep tired and exhausted. It appeared the landscape had received a makeover. It was weird to think that just yesterday I was in the Bay Area, home of Silicon Valley, and one day later, in a valley that was home to a man in a rice field.
Thank you.
As the locals began their day, so would I. Today was the day I would be meeting my father's new lover. At this point, my feeling towards my father's new lover were more out of curiosity than anything else. I had discarded the rumors that I had heard about her, so like a journalist, I would try to let the story unfold by itself. When I met my father's new lover, Glenn, she was 19, going on 20. At first, she was cautious and pretty distant. Later that evening, my father and Glenn took me out for a night on the town. We had dinner and checked out some of the local hangouts. We eventually ended up here, at this karaoke bar, where Glenn's caution gave way to the mic. On our way home, we found ourselves stranded. Our car had stalled miles away from the compound. When seconds later, a group of young men surrounded us. Anticipating danger, my father reached into his trunk, pulled out his machete, and approached the group. Fortunately, they knew of my father. One guy even gave my father a ride back to his house on his motorcycle. Glenn and I waited patiently for his return. And all of a sudden, there I was, face to face with the woman who so drastically changed my life. Sensing she was uneasy, I told her I was there not to judge her. She must have believed me, because at that moment she opened up, and in a concerned, demure voice asked me how my mother was doing. Over the next couple of days, the two of us talked openly about our lives. Her number one goal was to become a nurse after she graduates from college.
I really want to go to school, finish my course, being a nursing. So one more year to go before graduate. And I want to have, when I graduate, I want to be a nurse, of course, and work. And if I can go to other countries, then why not?
Glenn also spoke candidly about her relationship with my father. She was frank, and I think she'd be the first to admit that her relationship with him is based on practicality, as well as one of genuine emotion. Who would have guessed that by kicking around a little bit of dirt, I would discover what most Americans rarely think about. It was strange to think that the only thing that separated me from this lifestyle was my father's decision to immigrate to America. So for the next couple of days, I made the decision to uplift my roots. And although I had visited the mega malls once or twice, for the most part, I spent the majority of my time here, in this rural town. And I guess one could argue, the lifestyle here was definitely more Darwinian. And a place where the rules are different. That is, when the rules are followed. But for the most part, I found the majority of people to be friendly. And even though I wasn't able to speak the language, I got by. Fortunately, English is a second language here. Being an American, I was just as much a curiosity to them as they were to me. For some, life was simple. Each day at this local market, vendors brought in fresh fish, meat, and fruits and vegetables. Tucked away in this corner was a different kind of an import, not the radio, but the song that echoed throughout the market. The Philippines is truly a society of strange juxtapositions, and like it or not, signs of global capitalism were everywhere. The customs and culture of this country have been heavily influenced by China, Spain, and most recently, the United States. And it was apparent as soon as I turned on the radio. I heard 50 Cent, J-Lo, as well as a host of other artists. Heck, even Governor Schwarzenegger made his way to this local gym. Of course, they had their own celebrities. Their broadcast media was a mixture of programs from the Philippines,
What's up with your business? It's confidential, fair. Meeting here, meeting there.
Now, when the Lord Jesus Christ says repent,
shows from the West,
We're new to this region and we're eager to make contact with
And Shiite mosque, of course, people will remember possibly back in August there was a major
and I believe one or two shows from Japan. Once while channel surfing, I even caught the tail end of an Oprah Winfrey segment. And I have to admit, it was nice seeing a familiar face, especially when you find yourself traveling inside the backwoods of the world. I eventually switched residence and spent the majority of my time at my father's house, inside a compound where he, Glenn, and her parents lived. The compound was located inside a barangay, or what we would call a neighborhood. To get there, I would have to go through a dirt road and pass by a row of shanty homes that were made out of old plywood and corrugated metal. Across from the shanty homes was the compound. Inside was my father's house, equipped with running water, electricity, and a host of other modern conveniences. Surrounding his house were more shanty homes. So for the next several days, this compound would be my stage. And with their permission, they let me into their homes. My father's house was in the center of the compound, along with the community pump. Many of the people here did not have access to running water, and probably never will. Imagine living a life and never knowing what a warm shower feels like, let alone an indoor bathroom. In the Philippines, their view of the world is more direct.
day-dayal po lang.
Hello! Tay!
Tay!
Wala ni Dayal mo.
Kundi suna ako ma. Sino po sila?
Ay, tanging! Ay, si Nani Abby!
Living with me inside my father's home were Glenn's parents. They supported her decision to be with my father. As a matter of fact, they even asked for my approval. Since my father was the head of the household, I immediately outranked everyone, including Glenn's parents. Without asking, Glenn's mother made my bed, cleaned my room, washed my clothes, cooked, and served my meals. My royalty status was most evident during meal times. First to eat was my father, Glenn, and myself. Waiting patiently for us to finish were Glenn's parents, and it was only after we finished would they then help themselves. I believe this is called institutional classism. Personally, I felt a little uncomfortable. Joining the parents were many of the underweight children from the compound. Away from envious eyes, I would just lay in bed for hours dazed. The longer I worked on this documentary, the more people I was meeting from the barangay, many who were my first cousins. It was hard not to feel guilty, because deep down inside I knew the only difference between myself and many of the people here was 1 degree of separation. One morning, towards the middle of videotaping this project, I noticed the outline of a young boy, no older than 5, shining brightly against an old piece of plywood. His name was Jeg, and he was a semi-orphan of sorts. His mother took a job in the Middle East as a cashier at a convenience store. She did this so that she could send money back home for Jeg. Jeg's father was a truck driver and was gone for days making deliveries around the island. And although he had extended family, I found Jeg by himself on many occasions, sometimes quite a distance from the compound. Perhaps starved for attention, this self-reliant 5-year-old man, who spoke no English, followed me around everywhere. Even after being told not to. Late at night, Jeg would sneak into my room looking for trouble. But then again, what 5-year-old wouldn't, if both parents were away at work? The Philippines is classified as a developing country, where there is a very thin upper and middle class. In contrast, the majority of the population is poor, and they're referred to as the masses. For the lower class, it was literally a day-to-day existence.
How much is it?
Cigarettes were not sold by the pack, but by the stick. Canned foods were 1/4 the size of an American portion. And what we get in the mail for free, they bought as luxury items. The minimum wage mandated by the Philippine government was roughly $4 a day. In rural areas, where much of the workforce was driven by the underground economy, a person was lucky if they got paid $2 a day. In the barangay, unemployment was high. Many of the people here had college degrees. I met engineers, nurses, and teachers, all who were out of work, each saying the same thing: there are no jobs. In the Philippines, there is no public health insurance, so for many, they were more likely to visit their local priest than their local doctor. And in the larger cities, where poverty was more apparent, it was hard for me to watch the homeless begging for food, especially since I came from a country that had the opposite problem. In America, we have people who are dying from having too much food. Well into this project, I'd become friendly with many of the people here in the barangay. There were literally hundreds of people here, each with their own story. In this shanty home lived 3 young men, 2 who were married with children, Jeg being one of them. Both parents of these brothers passed away at an early age. Extended family and others help out when they can. 2 of the brothers worked for a multinational corporation delivering soft drinks around the island. The 3rd brother, Randy, worked at my father's farm. Estong, the youngest brother, was my homie, as well as the neighborhood clown. Being similar in age, I found myself kicking it with the brothers. And even though they had their fair share of hard knocks, it's all good. You see, in this corner of the world, there were no antidepressant drugs. You pretty much had to deal with stress the old school way, with cigarettes, alcohol, and a night out with the guys. Regardless of the time of day, there was always, without exception, someone singing karaoke. Perhaps it's because there are very few things on this island that are free, singing being one of them. So naturally, the place to hang out and have a little fun was the local karaoke bar. In this part of the Philippines, both married and single men were self-described as players, but then again, so were some of the women. At this karaoke bar await the ladies of the night. In developing countries, being a woman means you have very few options in life. In the Philippines, high school ends when you are 16, so in rural areas with few options, both men and women, after high school, often look for a partner to start a family. The majority of this country is Roman Catholic, so Planned Parenthood and the use of contraceptives are forbidden by the church. On the other hand, population growth in the Philippines is a concern. One woman who I met was named Ruby, and like the precious stone, she was cherished by a number of men as far away as Manila. When I first met her, the local matchmakers, as well as every other family with an unmarried daughter, had definitely set their plans in motion. Ruby came from one of the poorest families in the compound. I remember on one occasion, while drunk, Ruby's father offered her to me. The hidden subtext being, please fall in love with my daughter and rescue her. Please. When I came back 3 months later, it appeared Ruby had been keeping a secret from everyone. For 7 months, she successfully hid her pregnancy. An aspiring singer, she was once offered a small gig in Japan, but turned it down in hopes of something better. But unfortunately, for this precious stone, there was no Prince Charming to come rescue her from her life in the barangay.
On our third hour together, this is James Russell.
My father told Glenn that he thought of me as an innocent soul. Maybe before this trip, but not anymore. As I came closer to the end of videotaping this project, I was glad that I found the answers I was looking for. Here at my father's farm, I watched this unconventional couple, and underneath its surface it's simple. On one end, you have a young woman who is determined to escape poverty, and on the other, a much older man who gave in to temptation. And in all fairness, they both made themselves available. Off camera, I've spoken to both of them candidly, and I guess this documentary could have focused more on their relationship, but in all honesty, I think this story is much bigger than the two of them. And even though I had come to accept the relationship, the two of them will forever have to live with the consequences. As for my father, he has lost his family of 40 years. As for Glenn, I have relatives in the barangay who question her motives. As for me, I've decided not to place judgment. A couple of days before my return to the U.S., I took a trip to Baguio, a major city high above the rest of the island. Accompanied by my father and Glenn, we traveled on windy roads that snaked through a series of mountains. And at times, we were literally parallel to the clouds. And as we drew closer, a metropolis came out of hiding. During the week, Glenn lived here, studying to become a nurse. My father was paying for her tuition, as well as her board.
Which one? Here. Mommy, wala.
It's my friend, Maya.
Happy to meet you, Mommy.
On January 1, I was in the hospital. Umabot ako sa 40. Ay, 40 ako. Mag-workout na ako.
This was the last time I saw Glenn, waving goodbye to me in her gray concrete castle, high above the rest of the island. The next morning, on my way back to the airport, my mood was kinda gray. The night before, while staring into the South China Sea, a young man from the barangay was killed during a fight at a local festival. He died from a stab wound. I was invited, but I'm glad I didn't go. Catching that on video would have been a real bummer.
Thank you.
Before I left, I literally gave everything I had away, including my shoes to my younger cousin. They say, never judge a man until you walk a mile in his shoes. In the case of my younger cousin, after he walks a mile in my shoes, I could care less if he judges me. I just hope that he keeps walking until he finds a place where he can have a better life. When I got back home, it appeared my story had come full circle, starting on an island halfway around the world, ending up here on an island in the San Francisco Bay. I wish I had a moral to my story, but I don't. And unlike other reality TV shows, there is no prize at the end of this program. Well, this is pretty much the end of my story. My name is Anthony Garcia, and thank you for letting me share a page and a half of my life with you.